Hey dudes, welcome back to The Bants. As always, I am your host, The Bants. And it's Monday, the beginning of the week, so it's time for our first What's Happening in Fashion this week. So let's just get right into it. And starting us off, we have our headlines for the day. And in our first headline for the week, it was announced that Alexander Wang will no longer be showing at New York Fashion Week. And although this is a little bit disappointing, seeing as that he's now following trends with what Vivienne Westwood did in London and PSNY Public School in New York did in New York as well. Although I do prefer to see those two brands at the shows because I just honestly consider them more interesting, the fact that Alexander is following suit here might be the first death knell that we see as we see more and more of these really well-known, really popular designers starting to drop out. And I can totally understand why, and even though I'm still kind of against the fact that they're dropping out, like, it's obviously down to them, and I guess we'll just have to be looking forward to their lookbooks. And for our second headline, and obviously I'm still covering this, it's Paris Fashion Week, and it's finally over, so we can stop hogging the videos with it. And as per usual, I've situated all the brands that I saw into four different groups, that being bad, disappointing, promising, and good. So let's just break it down one more time. So starting off with the bad brands, and these two brands that I chose should come as no surprise to anyone that follows this channel, and those two brands are Vetements and Balenciaga. And personally, I don't even feel like wasting my breath on why they were so terrible, but they were pretty bad. And then moving on to the disappointing brands for the show, and once again, some of these brands might be a little bit shocking to some of you, and those brands were Dior Home, Maison Margiela, CDG Home Plus, Tom Brown, and Junior Watanabe Man. And even though these brands did have nice pieces here and there, like for Dior, obviously the suits were very nice. For CDG, there was a really nice amount of crazy pieces, colorful pieces, maximalized pieces, as there usually is. They just overall really fell flat, in my opinion, and didn't have the oomph that they normally do. I was also really disappointed in the fact that Galliano really didn't set the bar that high for menswear as he did for women's wear over the last year. So, I mean, hopefully he can push menswear a little bit higher next time around. And as far as Junior Watanabe goes, after seeing a lot of his North Face pieces over the last year and seeing how great those were, and then showing off this show that felt very bland with just regular North Face pieces with just a couple lines of color on them, and same with Canada Goose, like, I don't know what he was thinking. Like, it's like he blew his entire load on the patchwork of North Face, like in the individual pieces, and decided to just kind of let this show go, and it was really boring. But out of all the brands that I was really disappointed in, it was Tom Brown that really sunk that bar for me. And the reason being is that if you've ever followed Tom Brown's fashion shows, you know that he tends to make it the closest to being haute couture for menswear that anybody does ever, really. And to see such a just kind of lackluster showing here, I was like just so underenthused. It was just so disappointing. Alright, and with that, let's move on to the brands that I thought were promising this time around. And those brands were BBS, June J, Rinshu, Sankuans, Christian Dada, and Mihara Yasuhiro. As far as Boris, June, and Mihara go, I feel like they're starting to come more back to prominence in these shows. Like, I started to see a lot more interesting designs that were more telling of years past, so I do think that it was nice to see them kind of be a little bit more refreshing than usual. For Rinshu, for being such a maximalized brand as it is, to see them kind of tone it down and play a little bit more with like blacks and whites was very interesting, and if they try to go this path now, I don't think it would be a problem either, as they've kind of now shown themselves to be able to do that. And as for Sankwans, I've been talking about this for a while, seeing a lot of their past lookbooks, but I'm finally excited to see something a little bit different, a little bit more exciting out of them, and I think this is a great step in the right direction. But by far and above, the most promising brand to me out of all of these was And de Moulemeester. Like, that show was fucking amazing. in my opinion. But the reason why I'm putting Andy in promising and not good is because this is the best show they've had in years. Like, I would even say probably the best show they've had since Anne actually left the brand. Like, a lot of people have been saying for a long time that the brand should have just closed when she left. And up until this point, I pretty much totally agreed with them. But I feel like this show was the first time in a long time that, and I apologize, I don't know who's designing for Andy right now. I'll definitely check after this. But whoever they are, it feels like they finally got her essence into the form and function of the pieces this time around. However, that said, the fact that there's so much color in this collection is really, really unsatisfying to me. Like, if all these pieces had just either been black or white, or it's Andy, it should all just be all black. But if it was very less toned down and very dark, this would have been really close to a perfect show in my opinion. Alright, and lastly we have the shows that I considered good, so let's just go over those. For those, I chose Agnes B, Lanvin, Hermes, Enric Viskov, White Mountaineering, CDG Shirt, Balmain, and Alexander McQueen. And I do have to state up front, a lot of these brands I really am not a fan of. I'm not a really big fan of their styles, but even so, I think to the fact of what they were trying to do, they did an excellent job in that. Good examples of this would have been Hermes, Lanvin, and Alexander McQueen. Although I do have to say I was very, very surprised by Balmain. As somebody that's not a huge fan of the brand, I think they really knocked it out of the park with that rockstar style. Aside from the amount of patent leather they used, I just do not like patent leather in clothes. But even so, they really filled that aesthetic very well, and it was way over the top without being gaudy like a lot of the other brands in the other weeks had been doing up until now. But when it comes down to it, I actually had two brands this time around that I felt were just absolutely fantastic and well and above better than the rest, and those two brands were Pigalle and Sacai. For Sacai, it's pretty simple really. Bape is just a genius when it comes to manufacturing these just insanely crazy silhouettes, and her use of just different patterns and textures and layering, it's so good, and this season is just far and above on par with some of the best things she's ever done. And as for Pigalle, like, the people behind Pigalle are just such fucking masters of using color to their advantage and to their fullest. It's just so incredible. And aside from that, the different layering they did with the different patterns and the different fabrics and just the different cuts of clothing, everything about the show was just exciting and vibrant and fun and interesting, and you could really look up and over every single fucking outfit and just spend time just going countless times over and over and over and finding something new. Just bravo to both of them, absolutely well done. Alright, and with that, let's move on to our art stories for the day. And first up, the Joshua Liner Gallery in New York City has been hosting its 10-year anniversary over this last month, featuring artists such as Para and David Ellis, and a whole slew of others. So if you have the chance to get there, the show ends next week. So if you happen to be in New York anytime in the following week, I'd definitely go check that out. Then it was announced that renowned artist Damien Hirst has produced some new spot paintings, which will be showing off in March in Norfolk. So if you are a fan of his work or want to see his new paintings, I'd definitely check out some of these photos. Then Juxtapose put up a gallery of some of Katharina Grosse's new drapery paintings. And honestly, whether you're a fan of fabric or color or paintings in general, I would definitely check out these photos. Some really amazing ideas here. Then Starsked Gallery in New York City has a very nice exhibit going on that is purely only figures and sculpture based, and they do have some sculptures and pieces by some of the greats in this area, such as Kaws and Jeff Koons and George Condo. So if you happen to be in New York anytime in the next month, the event closes, I believe, mid-February, so definitely go check that out, especially if you're a fan of sculptures. Then auction house Sotheby's released some of their numbers about a recent auction they did involving a lot of street artists, and I do have to say it's really nice to see a lot of these street artists finally making some money. That's totally well deserved, and I love this new influx of non-classical art on the scene as well. And with that, let's move on to our fashion stories for the day, starting off with John Galliano releasing his Fall/Winter 2018 lookbook, and I'm really excited about this. I think there's a lot of really nice ideas in this lookbook, a lot of very interesting perspectives on fashion, and it's all very heavily Japanese influenced as well. Personally, I wish I had seen more of this in his Margiela showing, but at the very least, we can tell from this that he at least knows how to make some kind of exciting menswear. So I'm really looking forward to it. Then Julius also released their Fall/Winter 2018 lookbook, and all I can really say is, what the fuck is this shit? Honestly. Like, seriously, looking at this lookbook is literally the epitome of what I didn't want some of these insanely artisanal fashion houses to follow. And what it looks like to me is it's Julius trying to ride this maximalized gaudy train along with everybody else, and it just doesn't work that way. Like, there's way too much color for Julius. There's patterns which are not his style or persona at all. A lot of the fits are very bland and boring and lack that intricate detail that the brand is so well known for. Obviously, I'm just so fucking disappointed. I can't even, explain how angry I am at this collection. All I can really say about this, without getting too overly angry, is I hope that Horikawa takes a really deep, long look at this and realizes his mistake and returns to his original form very soon. Then Bape had some new releases, starting with their Patched Capsule collection. Basically, an overly zealous, maximalized, just kind of patched graphic, just slew of items that even make brands like Softnet feel minimalist, which is really saying something. And I actually do enjoy these pieces, but I don't feel like they're for everyone. But if you consider yourself a Bape fan, I would definitely check them out. But on the flip side, they also decided to release some camo button-up shirts with hoods on them, so I guess Bape is just being Bape, and it's not always a good thing. Then in watch news, IWC announced their 150th anniversary Big Pilot watch, and I have to say I absolutely adore it. It's a nice play on what they've always done with the watch. It's really nicely designed, really clean. The only problem is that they only made 100 of them. But even so, if you can get your hands on it, if you have the money for it, I think it'd definitely be worth it. Then Magic Stick released a Spring/Summer 2018 lookbook, and I think it's pretty interesting overall. Let me just start by saying I am absolutely delighted with how large this lookbook is. I'm so sick of seeing these 10, 20-page lookbooks that are just the same 3 shirts shot over and over again. But moving on to the lookbook, because that's obviously what's important here. It's a really nice play on some Techwear styles and some contemporary styles, and even a little bit of a mixture of the two here and there. There's some really nice ideas in here, like the vest backpack I think is phenomenal. There's some really nice detailing here on some of the more intricate pieces. Overall, if you're a fan of contemporary or a fan of techwear and are looking for something a little bit more different than usual, I would definitely check this out. Then Byborre released their Fall Winter 2018 lookbook, and this is honestly one of the most interesting things I have seen in a long, long time in fashion. And what I mean by that is that if you look at the pieces here, they're not done in the traditional cut and sew style. Like the pattern making process is different, the stitching process is different, the fabrics themselves are very, very different. Even though I don't think the pieces are really super wearable yet, if you do fancy yourself a fan of textiles and very obscure pattern making, or just interesting clothing in general, this is definitely worth looking into. They might be on to something very brilliant in the near future. Alright, and with that, let's move on to our articles for the day. And first up, Grail put out a very fascinating article on the Asian influence behind what's considered by most as this cyber ninja techwear movement. So if you consider yourself a fan of techwear or kind of socio-economic interests in fashion and how they affect fashion, I would definitely check this out. One of the best articles I've read in a long time. Grailed also put out a very, very nice article on the history of Pharrell's style and influence in style over the years. And even though he's starting to get more limelight nowadays, for a long time I feel like Pharrell was kind of this hidden character in the style sphere, unless you were really kind of in the know. So to see a really in-depth look at this, it's very fascinating. If you consider yourself a fan of streetwear or a fan of history of streetwear or just history of style in general, definitely worth the read. Grail also did a very quick little article on the 30-year anniversary and history of the Air Max sneaker. So if you consider yourself a fan of the history of sneakers or even Nike in general, I definitely check this out. And along that line, Heddles did a very nice history of the Red Wings boot. So if you consider yourself a boot fan or an Americana fan, or even just a workwear fan that has a love of history, I would definitely give this a read. And lastly, Heddles also did an article on the question of whether or not one-wash denim is still considered raw. So if you're not familiar with that term and want to know a little bit more about denim, I would definitely give that a read as well. Alright guys, and with that we come to the end of our first whiff for the week. Hope you guys have enjoyed. As per usual, down in the description I have linked all the articles that we talked about today, and if you have any other questions, comments, concerns, or just want to talk fashion in general, as always feel free to leave me a comment. I love to talk about fashion, obviously. And with that, I hope you guys have a good rest of your week. Enjoy the next couple days, and until the next video, I'll see you guys next time.